Did you ever wish there was a way to zip through airport security and relax before your flight? If you like this idea like I do, I'm excited to tell you about today's sponsor, Clear. Clear is the absolute best way to get through airport security. Go to clearme.com/brain and use the promo code BRAIN for your free 2 months of Clear. That's clearme.com/brain using the promo code BRAIN when checking out. Life presents the toughest challenges. Every day you are faced with decisions that test your ability to express who you really want to be in this world. We're told to keep saying affirmations and keep thinking positively, but what do you do when that stuff doesn't work? Welcome to the Overwhelmed Brain, where you'll learn to make decisions that are right for you so that you can create the life you want now. Hello, welcome to the show. My name is Paul Coliani, and I'm here to help you increase your emotional intelligence so that you can avoid dysfunction, handle toxic situations with grace and ease, and show up as your authentic self. Everything I talk about on the show is my personal opinion and is meant for informational and educational purposes only. Always consult a medical or psychological professional, someone much smarter than me, before making any changes that could affect your physical or mental health. Yes, I don't mind telling you my limitations, but it's totally up to you. This is your life. You have say and control in what you want to do with your life and what content you want to consume and what you do with that content. I personally love the self-help, I don't know if you want to call it an industry, but all the content out there that we can consume and make our own and do with what we wish. And when we do that, we create the life we want. That doesn't mean that we can't do it through therapy or through coaches like me or any other source, but it does help us take responsibility for our life and maybe give us no excuses. I mean, there's always an excuse. There's always a reason for things that happen in our life, and we either can be stuck on those excuses or reasons, or we can say, you know what, I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to do something about my life. I'm going to do something about this challenge that I'm having. How about I'm going to do something about this repeated challenge that keeps happening in my life? That's sort of like I was thinking earlier this morning. I woke up early and I just read for a little bit, and this passage in the book had something to do with looking in the rearview mirror. I'm reading Hal Elrod's book, The Miracle Morning, and one of the passages is some people suffer from rearview mirror syndrome, RMS. And they just carry this baggage around with them, always looking in the rearview mirror, always thinking about the past mistakes and ruminating on the past, and I should have done this and I should have done that, instead of looking in the present and the future to what they need to do next. And so I thought, that's interesting, because some of us will go around and see every experience as something new, even if it's similar to another experience we had in the past. This is something my girlfriend and I talked about a while back. She said, every time you get into a relationship, or at least in the past, your relationship has failed, or you broke up. And every time you broke up, the woman in your life left you. So how can you possibly get into another relationship with any sort of optimism? And I thought, because I treat every relationship as a different experience. It's something new. And on top of that, I think of every relationship as an opportunity to feel love again, to be happy. I mean, not that I wasn't happy outside the relationship, but to expand my happiness, to make life more enjoyable, to share my life with someone else. I don't see it as, it's another relationship, it'll probably fail, so I won't open up my heart to more love and more happiness, because I'm not carrying around that baggage. And, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. I'm trying to say that when you have this rear view mirror syndrome and you're looking in the past and you think, well, it happened before, it'll happen again, so I don't want to be too vulnerable, so I'm not going to enjoy the experience that I have in front of me. With relationships, that's important. You might be carrying around baggage in your life, emotional baggage, where you have the past that's really dragging you down, and you think, well, I don't want that past to happen again, so I will be closed off in the present and in the future. If I close myself off, then at least when the past happens again, because I believe it will, because that's my perspective, my past is in front of me and I'm looking at it all the time, then by not opening myself up and not being more vulnerable and not opening my heart and being more loving and allowing myself to be happy, that I won't experience a great amount of pain when it hits. And so, yeah, that's what some people do. They go around in their life closed off, and they don't experience the greatest joys or the greatest experiences they can have because they close themselves off, or at least put the wall high enough so that some things can get in and some things can't. And when we do that, we just don't experience the life that we want. And I'm not saying you should just open right up right now and allow everything in, because some situations aren't safe. Some people that you're around might not be safe. So it's not just a matter of let's open the floodgates and see what happens. It's a matter of systematically taking out the things that aren't safe in your life, or getting away from the things that aren't safe in your life, so that you can open your heart, so that you can be more vulnerable. And by doing that, you can enjoy life more. And I know some people are listening right now and they're thinking, I can't do that. I just can't. I'm locked in. I am stuck. This is where I am. I have committed and there's no way out now. That is one of those excuses and one of those reasons that will certainly hold you back. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying that you're right. I'm not saying anything. I'm saying that when you have that as your philosophy, as your guiding principle or limiting principle, limiting belief, then what ends up happening is that you never actually have any optimism toward the future or about the present, and you end up stuck where you are because you never open the door to see if anything else exists, any other beliefs, any other perceptions. So your belief or perception that life will never get any better than this and I'm stuck becomes your reality. And I know still, again, some people are going to say, yes, that is my reality. I cannot change it. I won't argue with you. That I know you believe it, and I believe that you believe you are right. At the same time, I've been in that space, and many thousands and thousands of people listening right now have been in that space where they absolutely knew there was nothing they can do. They absolutely knew they were stuck, yet they somehow managed to get unstuck. And it wasn't some stroke of luck where somebody came along and said, here, I'll help you get unstuck. Sometimes it was. But what ends up happening is that everyone has a threshold. Everyone has that tipping point where you are sick of being stuck. Because I guarantee you, if you feel stuck in anything right now, there's a tipping point where something's going to come along and push you over the edge, and you're going to find a way out. It almost always happens. You know, I can't say that absolutely every scenario is like that because, you know, some people have certain obligations and responsibilities and you can't get out of them. But there are certain things in life that we make our obligation and we make our responsibility that maybe we don't have to. We don't have to make that our responsibility. If something in our life is contributing to that sick feeling inside of us, then it's time to reconsider what we're doing, how we're showing up. I'm not saying that it's an easy path. I'm not saying that it's not challenging or that you definitely don't have a tough road to hoe ahead, but it is possible and it is probable, and you can get to that tipping point, that pushing you over the edge. Because just like I talked about, I don't know if it was another episode or my newsletter or my blog, I was talking about, this might have been recent, I was talking about how when I was 10 years old, this kid kept slapping me in the face and wanting to wrestle with me. And he was this bully up the street. I never liked him, but he always injected himself into my life in some way, shape, or form. And I was, very much not a kid that stood up for myself. I just allowed it to happen. He would come into my life, he would come into my house and just force me to play with him. And I didn't like him, and I was actually scared of him. But I did. I played with him every now and then. And one night we were wrestling, just like boys do. And I was done. I had enough. I didn't want to wrestle anymore. I was tired and it just wasn't fun anymore. So I sat down at the chair and he came over and he's like, come on, let's wrestle. Come on. And he kept like egging me on. And then he started like lightly tapping me on the face. And he's like, come on, let's wrestle. Come on, let's wrestle. And I didn't have a tipping point until that point. I didn't know what a threshold was until that moment, because the last time he slapped me across the face and he got more and more aggressive, I just stood up and walloped him. I just stood up and just punched him in the jaw, and he went down. Again, I was only 10 years old. I didn't have much strength. I wasn't working out. I never fought before, but this came out of me like it was just out of nowhere. And I walloped him, just pow, and he was down. And I calmly sat down and just waited for him to get up. It was so strange because I didn't have any fear. I didn't have any thoughts of repercussions or consequences. I just thought, well, that's what needed to happen. I mean, if I had consciously done that, I would have had so much fear. I would have had so much anxiety about that, because what's going to happen next? He's going to get up and try to beat me up. What's going to happen next? But I had reached my tipping point. That threshold activated. He activated that threshold and pushed me over the edge. And that edge caused me to go unconscious and do something that I would never have done consciously, because I was too afraid. I was not the person that stood up for myself. I just let people walk on me. Even as a kid, I just let other kids walk on me. And this came out of nowhere, but really it was a buildup, because that's what the tipping point is. It's the buildup where you're finally close to the edge, and then somebody pushes a little farther. And you have no choice because you want to survive. There's some mechanism, fight or flight, that kicks in, and your survival mechanism kicks in. And when that happens, you take action. And it's usually unconscious, or most of the time it's unconscious. Unless you've been practicing, or you meditate, or you're into martial arts and you can control your emotional state and you can control your anger. You can still get angry, but you can control it. You can get to that point where you can control the next step and you have a better hold or understanding of your thresholds. But as a kid, that's harder to do. You don't really get into that stuff as a kid, but that's what happened. And from that point on, I've only had that happen maybe twice since then. And it wasn't like I punched somebody, but I went unconscious. These words came out of me, these emotions came out of me, and it wasn't that I lost it. It was more that I really stood up for myself. It was more like I was honoring myself to the fullest, because the person I was around didn't want to honor me at that place or whatever was happening. I just stood up for myself, and blah, all this stuff came out. So this is a really cool resource that you have in you, where if you get pushed to the edge, that threshold will be met and you will be able to access something inside of you that maybe you didn't think you had. Or maybe you know it's in there and you don't know what you're capable of, but I guarantee you it's in there. There's only so far you can be pushed. No matter how much meditation you do, no matter how enlightened you are, someone can push you over the edge. Someone can make you hit that tipping point, and you will do or say something that maybe you didn't expect it to come out. I guess it's similar to what I talked about last week. When you're put on the spot, it does feel like a tipping point. You can access that inner wisdom, that inner bodyguard, that inner protector that just steps up and takes care of things. That's inside you. That is in there. That will come out, believe me. And the only reason it might not come out is if you trained yourself the other way. And what I mean by that is some people learn to be so tolerant and so resilient of bad behavior that they train themselves to not be tipped over the edge, to take it and take it and take it until they're so beaten and so worn out that nothing comes out of them and they just flounder. They don't know what to do. They're like jello. They can't think, they can't speak, they can't move. Maybe not literally, but maybe. And when that happens, nothing happens. And they do nothing, and they don't protect themselves. This is why it's so important to take an inventory of who's in your life and how much bad behavior you are accepting and taking and continuing to take, and all of the emotions that you have about their bad behavior and what you're doing with those emotions. Are you repressing them? Are you holding them back because you want to keep the peace or something. And when you hold all that stuff back, it has to go somewhere. And usually when you hold a lot of negative emotions back, it starts to wear you down. It weakens you. It makes you more and more vulnerable in a bad way. A good vulnerability is when you are stronger because you're authentic. The negative aspect of vulnerability is when you are so beaten and so tolerant of bad behavior that you are weakened to the point where you can't necessarily take care of yourself anymore. You're not emotionally or mentally strong enough to take care of yourself in a psychological way. And when that happens, that's when you feel stuck. That's when you feel like, well, I've committed to this. There's no way out now. Or I've involuntarily committed to this and there's no way out now. And so in order to get that mental strength and emotional strength back, you have to start seeing yourself as important. You have to start understanding that there might be risks that you have to take in order to get your strength back. Then that might mean you have to stand up to certain people, or at least stand up for yourself and do the right thing for you. And that's a topic for another day, but the whole point is when you are able to get to the point where you feel strong enough inside of you and you can think about yourself as amazing, you can think about yourself as important and as significant and as a lovable person, a person who deserves to be respected, a person who deserves to be cared about. When you realize you are and deserve all those things, then you can look at yourself and say, damn, I am definitely worth fighting for. I mean, maybe fighting's not your thing, but mentally fighting. I'm definitely worth standing up for. I am definitely worth it, and I am going to do it. You know, if you want to put an affirmation in your life, you say, I am worth it. I even like to use the words, damn it. Damn it, I am worth it. I am not going to stand for that. I am worth more than other people are treating me right now. So I need to stand up for myself. That could and probably will happen to you someday. Somebody's going to treat you as less than worthy. And this is why it's important to have this inner perspective of yourself to remind you that, yeah, you are worthy. Yeah, you are awesome and amazing. And regardless of what other people have said to you in the past, you know yourself well enough now to know that you are worth fighting for. You are. I know you are. And if I said it, it's true. So I want you to take it. That's why I'm saying it, because I want you to take it in. I want you to absorb it. I want you to know it through and through. So that when it comes down to it and somebody pushes you to that edge, you know you have it in you, first of all. And if you don't, it's time to start believing in yourself. It's time to, I mean, that sounds so corny. Believe in yourself, but it's true. And it's not about just believing in yourself. It's knowing that you have it in you to stand up for yourself, to protect yourself, to do whatever it takes for you or your loved ones, you know, your children, your significant other, your family. You have inside you resources that you may or may not know about, but they're in there. It's that inner wisdom that I was talking about last week. Information and ability that you didn't realize or don't necessarily realize wholly that you have inside of you that can kick in when you need it. And when you need it might be that moment you get pushed over the edge. It always is. I mean, every time you get pushed to that point, it's always that point where you need something extra. And that extra stuff can come up. And even if you do feel withered and beaten down, and just like that Jell-O example I gave where you just feel, blah, I can't do anything. I am just totally emotionally worn out from this other person. You can still access it. It's still in there. There is a point where if I lightly punch you in the arm, and this is a terrible example, but I'm going to use it. I lightly punch you in the arm, and you'll go, hey, don't do that. And I'll lightly punch you in the arm again, and you'll go, stop, I don't want you to do that. And I'll lightly punch you in the arm again, and I'm going to keep repeating it, and I keep doing it, and I keep doing it. You're eventually going to push me away, even though I might be bigger than you or stronger than you or not, but let's just say I was, and I kept bothering you, and then eventually you said, that is enough, and you pushed me away. Hey, where did that come from? Why isn't that accessible all the time? It can be. It doesn't mean you have to get to that point. I mean, you can reach that level where you can control this, but it is in there. And I guarantee you someone will find your button one day and push that button over and over and over again until you push them away. And it might have to go there. Or at minimum, if you know you can't push them away, if you know the consequences are just too dire or they're too violent, then you'll have the wisdom to walk away. You'll have the wisdom to run away. You'll have the inner guidance and strength to tell yourself, I'm not going to deal with this anymore. That's enough. So the tipping point is great. I love having one. I know it's in there. It actually can help you with your anxiety, because if you're constantly anxious all the time because you're worried about such and such happening or XYZ happening, then if whatever you're worried about really does happen, you get past the point of anxiety. You get past the point of fear, and you just do what you need to do for you. It just happens. You can pull it out. So let this be some sense of solace inside of you that you have the capability, you have the resources. I do believe we're all built this way, unless we have some sort of miswiring in our brain or some other challenge. Almost all of us are built this way, to stand up for ourselves, to protect ourselves. And it's in there. It's just that sometimes we consciously hold back and we don't want it to show, or we don't want it to appear in front of other people. But remember that it's in there because deep down, way inside you, you know you're worthy, you're important, and you deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. Just like I say on my podcast, Love and Abuse, my other podcast about relationships and emotional abuse, you deserve to be treated kindly, with respect. And even if you don't believe that, even if there's some limitation inside of you that says, no, I really don't deserve that, way inside where that threshold gets met, you know it to be true. Otherwise, the threshold wouldn't be met, and you would never stand up for yourself. But we're all capable of being pushed to that edge. Just don't let anyone make you believe otherwise, and don't let yourself be conditioned into believing you're not important or worth standing up for. So anyway, when we come back, I'm going to read you an interesting email that I received. Something that I really haven't talked too much about on this show before. And it's a bit challenging, so I haven't made too many notes on this yet, so we're just going to see what we come up with when we come back. It's an important topic. It's a very timely topic because the world is becoming more progressive. The world is becoming more open-minded. At least parts of the world. At least there are people out there that are more progressive, that are less judgmental, and allowing other people to be themselves. I think it's an important topic. I think you'll think that too. We'll be right back. I wonder how many people out there are like me that like to get to the airport like 2 hours early. I mean, that sounds like a lot of time for some people, and to others, that's like, it's still not enough time. But I actually go to the airport early because I just like to relax. I like to not have to think about or stress about missing my flight. Well, today's sponsor, Clear, really helps make that happen. I mean, the not stressing part and the relaxing part, and even the missing my flight part. If I'm running late and I want to zip through these lines, Clear can help make it happen. So what is Clear? Why is Clear so awesome? Well, they have a very specific purpose, and that is to get you through security faster at airports, stadiums, and other venues. And they do that by making you your ID. And what that means is you don't have to pull it out of your wallet or your purse anymore. You become your ID. You can use your eyes or your fingerprints to confirm that you are you. I mean, just imagine that you get to the airport and you're like, okay, I need to get to my flight. What can I do? And then you look over and you see the Clear kiosks and you see the Clear ambassador ready to help you complete the process and take you through security. And suddenly you're on your way. This is what I was saying. You are your ID. You can get through security in just a tap of your finger. Clear replaces the need for physical ID cards. You're the best ID of yourself out there. No one has your eyes, no one has your fingerprints, and no matter how often you travel, this becomes a huge convenience and just makes the entire experience much less of a hassle, a little bit more pleasurable, and absolutely helps you get to your gate faster and reduce pre-flight stress. And it's not just airports. I mean, Clear does help you get through security faster in about 65 airports, and they're always adding more. But they're also in stadiums across the country. So if you're ever going to games, this is going to be so convenient for you. And not only you can have a family plan. If you're traveling with your family, up to 3 family members can be added at a discounted rate. And kids under 18 are free when traveling with a Clear member. So if you've been to a major airport lately and you're seeing these Clear kiosks, this is what it's all about. They are a great time saver, and right now, listeners of this show can get their first 2 months of Clear for free. That's right. So go check it out at clearme.com/brain and use the promo code BRAIN when checking out. That's CLEARME.com/brain. And using the promo code BRAIN will get your free 2 months of Clear. It's time to get rid of that I might miss my flight anxiety. ClearMe.com/brain. Welcome back. I want to talk about something that came into my email inbox a few days ago, and it is from a person that is experiencing marriage issues, but not necessarily the type of marriage issues that you normally hear about on this show or my other show. And that is a man who's discovering who he is in the marriage that isn't compatible with the way his wife saw the marriage, or himself saw the marriage probably when going into it. So I'm going to read you the message, and I will talk about it after I read it. This person writes, "Hey, I've been listening to your podcast and receiving counseling. Several years ago, I came out to my wife as transgender. We have been in limbo ever since. My wife and I are opposite in relationship dynamics. She is more dominant and outspoken in her needs, and I'm more submissive and non-confrontational and have great difficulty in expressing my needs, which brings me to my problem. I know that I'm self-limiting the exploration of my gender because it makes my wife really upset. She comes from a childhood of insecurity and trauma, and I feel like I am just another person in her life that is letting her down. So I continue to put on this charade and suppress exploring my gender and that I am somehow happy. As I move through therapy, it's becoming more apparent that transition is likely to happen for me. And he didn't actually tell me what kind of transition. I'm assuming a gender transition, and not like a relationship transition, or not. I don't know, but I'm going to assume that it's a gender transition. My question is, how do I let go of the guilt and the blame that I carry and follow the path that I need to live the authentic life that I have repressed from myself? And how do I let go of her if it comes down to it? I feel like I'm trapped between 2 worlds. How do I honor myself when doing so is going to hurt someone that I love? I should also mention that my wife suffers depression and has a very negative outlook in life and threatened suicide on several occasions. I also carry the burden that my actions will lead to that consequence as well. Anyways, any advice that you might have would be greatly appreciated. I love your podcast, and both this one and the Love and Abuse podcast are helping me on this difficult journey. Thank you for everything that you do and taking the time to read my email. I look forward to hearing from you." Okay, I'm going to call you Joe. Joe, that's a tough spot because what you're doing or what you're experiencing is you're going through, I don't want to call it an identity crisis, because you are becoming more familiar and comfortable in a new identity. And, forgive me if I'm being insensitive to the way you look at it, but the way I see it is when you identify and how you identify with yourself is changing or has changed, and you're trying to move into this new identity, this new shape of who you are, this new mold. And I don't just mean physically, I just mean you are going through this shift that you're trying to get comfortable with, and it sounds like you are more comfortable as another gender. And because you're comfortable with that, it's easier for you to get on board with it. Whereas, and I'm not going to tell you anything you don't already know, when you got married, that wasn't part of the arrangement that your wife had in mind. So regardless of your wife being more dominant and you being more submissive, which, it does play a role for sure. The initial marriage that was outlined when you got married probably didn't include, I may change my gender, or even I may change my identity. Marriage does bring in facets and components of identity shifting and changing often. And when it does, a marriage can either survive that or not. But when you throw in something as, I would say, extreme as a gender shift, a gender change into something that your spouse didn't sign up for, then you have a challenge, because it's not easy for someone to see their partner's identity change. And this can go anywhere from anywhere, meaning this can be from a man to a woman to a man, a person to a non-binary. It doesn't matter, but the spouse or partner didn't expect this, didn't sign up for it, and now what? And she's already dealing with depression and working through that stuff, so now she is piling that on top as well. And that's not your fault. I mean, there might be some responsibility here, or a lot of responsibility, because when you signed up for the marriage, if you had these thoughts beforehand, that might have been a good conversation to have. And if you didn't, or you were trying to deny them, or you weren't sure and you were just trying to figure it out, then of course, you may not have had that conversation. I don't know. But certainly, maybe to anyone else listening, that's something you want to talk about. That's something that you want to bring up. It could cost you the relationship, yes. But look at what Joe is going through now. Joe, you're experiencing this identity shift, if I may call it that, and transitioning into this other person, even though you're the same person, but to her, you're a completely different person. And so there's the part where you can have compassion for her viewpoint. Again, regardless of how she's been treating you, or if she's more dominant, the compassion that goes toward her regarding this viewpoint on this subject matter, I think should be present. And it should be something that you completely understand. And if you don't, try to get on board with that. And I think you do. I think you realize how hard it is, because you are telling me that you've been suppressing the thought of exploring that. And that, of course, is going to wear you down, and it's going to, in my prediction, depress you as well. It's going to get you into a depressed state. And then you'll have not only one depressed person in the marriage, you'll have both of you depressed. And of course, that's not going to be the happy marriage that either of you signed up for. So my first point is to remember that she had a viewpoint going in, and now that viewpoint has changed drastically. I mean, this isn't like she married an omnivore and now you're a vegan. This is something that's much deeper. And, some marriages can survive this. Some marriages can get through this. I'm not saying that's yes or no with you, but I'm saying that when you have something drastic that changes in your relationship, some relationships can survive. I watched a special like 10 years ago where a man liked to cross-dress, liked to dress up like a woman and go shopping and experience, not that all women love shopping, but that's what he liked to do. He liked to go shopping as a woman. And his wife, it took her a while to get on board with that, but now they go shopping together. And so that ladies' day out was something that they worked into their marriage. And he doesn't dress up like a woman all the time. He just likes to do it every now and then. And so what that did was actually strengthen their marriage, because he was living in a way that was hiding who he really was and wanted to be and wanted to experience. And his shifting of identity didn't involve the full transition. It just involved, this is what I want to do on every Tuesday or something. And it worked out. So it can work out. Now, let's just take your identity shifting out of the equation. If you said nothing about being transgender, then we have other issues to deal with. In fact, taking the gender subject out of the equation, I look at what you wrote as components that need to be worked on regardless of being transgender. Because it sounds like you had challenges going into it in the first place, or at least challenges developed. And so now that you want to transition, it's like pushing a ship out into sea to sail without having fixed all the holes. And so now you have all these holes, this shaky foundation that you pile something else on. And so I like to look at this as separate issues that perhaps if those were worked on first, then your identity shift can be addressed at that time. So my concern is that maybe she's not getting the help she needs, or, I don't know if you said that, did you? I don't think you said she was going through therapy. So I look at that as if she's not taking care of herself, if she's not seeing someone to help her through her other issues, then the gender issue doesn't even become an issue because she's got all this other stuff that she needs to take care of inside of her life. And if she doesn't take care of that stuff, then, you could probably make a minor change and it would be very difficult for her to handle. So I think first and foremost, if you want to keep this relationship, that you talk about her getting help, and you probably have already. And if she is getting help and it's not working, then at least you've gone down that path. You've tried that avenue. You don't give up on that. You keep looking for help. You keep finding the right therapist or the right counselor, or you get into a program that helps. But if you've gone down that avenue and there's nothing you can do and she's staying depressed, then you have that shaky foundation, like I said, and then introducing something else doesn't really go anywhere. In fact, it probably, like you said, makes it worse for her because she doesn't know how to handle it. So now you're in a situation where you can't express yourself like you were saying, and you can't explore that because you feel like if you do that, then it's going to make her situation worse, or she'll kill herself. I talk about the threat of suicide on my other podcast, Love and Abuse. There's an episode when your partner threatens to commit suicide. It is a way to control you. It's an emotionally abusive tactic or technique to control you. Doesn't mean they're not serious, but that is not necessarily coming from love. That's coming from fear. That's coming from other places. But when someone loves you, they don't threaten suicide to make you do something. That's not how it works. I know that doesn't help. You still need to work with that and deal with that. But I highly, highly recommend you listen to my episode in Love and Abuse on when your partner threatens suicide so that you understand the dynamic there and you understand what you need to do if it's really that serious. Because my personal perspective, when someone threatens suicide, is to take it absolutely seriously, 100%. I'm not talking about like a friend of yours that says, I'm depressed, I'm thinking about committing suicide. It's absolutely serious, yes, but you're not going to call the police on them in that moment, probably. You could call the suicide hotline for sure, but are you going to call the authorities and say, hey, my friend just told me he wants to commit suicide? Probably not. But when it's in a pattern of any type of emotional abuse, or like you said, she's been dominating, I'm assuming controlling, and she uses that as a method of control, then it's time to treat it seriously so she knows there's accountability for what she's saying. And this is a very touchy subject. I can't just tell you, do this and everything will be okay, because it may not. So what I'm saying is more of a personal opinion. It's not a direct command. I'm not telling you this is what you need to do. I'm saying if I were in your position and my girlfriend has been controlling and dominating and she's experiencing all this stuff and she threatens suicide if I don't do something specific, then I'm going to treat it seriously. I'm going to call the police because I don't want to take that responsibility. That's what happens in a relationship. When someone threatens suicide, they're expecting you to take the brunt of responsibility for their life. And you aren't supposed to do that. You're not their counselor. You're not the police. You're not anybody like that. You're their equal partner. And in an equal partnership, you want to be able to talk this stuff out. And when your partner says, I feel like killing myself, then you talk it out and you have a conversation on it. But if they're using that as a method of control, that's when you have to take it seriously. Otherwise, you take on the burden. And if and hopefully not when they kill themselves, you now feel guilty for the rest of your life because there's no way to talk to them anymore. That's what can happen. I don't want you to feel that guilt, which is why I take a hard stance on those who threaten suicide while they're in a relationship. And because she's said it several times, according to your message, that tells me that she's trying to control you. She wants to make you feel bad, keep you in a vulnerable space, keep you in a weakened space, like I was saying in the last segment. And as long as you believe that she might actually do it, You will always submit to her needs and her wishes. And, she has issues. She definitely needs help. But you are not qualified to help her. You are not in that space. You can help her as a partner, as a supporter, as a lover, as a friend. But when it comes to subject matter that people have studied years and years to help people with PhDs that know how to talk to patients that want to commit suicide, that's not your forte. And even if it was, even if you told me I'm a psychotherapist, I deal with this stuff all the time, you're still the partner. You're still too much involved. You can't see clearly from the outside. So you're going to make different decisions than a therapist outside the relationship would. So anyway, none of this really actually helps you yet. Everything I've said isn't necessarily a step in the direction that you're trying to take here. I think it helps to outline the way I did a little bit, at least my perspective of what's happening. So now you have a sort of an outline of what's going on. But let's dive into the details a little bit. One of your questions is, how do I let go of the guilt and the blame that I carry and follow the path I need to do to live the authentic life that I have repressed myself from? So there's two different questions there, or two different directions. One is letting go of the guilt and the blame that you carry. What are you feeling guilty about? That would be my first question. What do you actually feel guilty about? I think it's important to define that. If you feel guilty that you got married and then suddenly you changed the rules, there's probably some guilt there. I could imagine that. If I suddenly decided that I wanted to be gay and my girlfriend's like, what? This isn't what I signed up for, I would probably feel a little guilty. So that may or may not be justified guilt, but it would probably happen. Meaning I might not have had any gay tendencies before we got together, and suddenly I do. And that would be a problem because she thought she was going to live the rest of her life with me, and it was going to be a heterosexual relationship between two heterosexual people. But changing the variables obviously changes things. So there's one aspect of that is, how do you let go of the guilt? Well, I think it's important to remember that you probably had this in you for a long time, and you just started to realize that you needed to explore it, because as you continue with your marriage will get worse and worse and worse. So I would look at that, and this is probably not the best advice, but I would look at this as, if I stayed in the marriage without saying a thing and continued this marriage regardless of my own needs, then would I feel even more guilty because I'm not giving her my whole self, my true self. I'm not being authentic. I'm holding back. And so there's guilt on that edge too. Again, it's probably not the best advice because one guilt over another doesn't make something better. But you look at the best of the worst situation, which is you stay in a marriage being inauthentic and holding back, or you leave the marriage being yourself, and either way, she's going to be hurt. In fact, you have to look at this as, no matter what you do from this point on, it's not going to be easy for her, and she is going to feel hurt. So this is important to remember going forward, that it doesn't matter what decision you make going forward, it's going to hurt her. That doesn't take away the guilt, I know. But if the guilt is already there, then what is the best path, the most authentic path, the healthiest path for both of you? I personally don't endorse marriages where one or both people are inauthentic and can't be themselves. I'd like to think that when someone discovers something about themselves, that their partner would do their best to support it, even though it could be devastating. Just like if I suddenly decided to become gay and my girlfriend's like, what? You're gay? And I said, yeah, I can't help it. This is the way it is, and this is how I feel. I would expect her to be upset. I would expect her to go through a range of emotions. I would expect her to be angry, and she has every right to be. But eventually I would like to think that she gets to that point where she really honors me, really loves me, and says, I hate this, but at the same time, I want you to be happy. Because I like to look at love that way. If she did that to me, if she wanted to be a lesbian and didn't want to be in this relationship, it would be hard. It would be difficult. I'd ask her, all kinds of things like, can we work this out? We definitely have a conversation. But in the end, if she just had no attraction to me whatsoever, I wouldn't want to be with someone who wasn't attracted to me. I wouldn't want to be with someone who has no desire for me as a man, because it doesn't fulfill me. So it would hurt, there would be pain, there would be grieving, but I wouldn't want to be with someone who didn't want to be with me. And if there was no attraction there, then I would have to accept that. I make it sound easy, I know I do, but we're talking about it. This is how we get it out in the open and dive into ourselves and figure out what we do in the moment. So there's that kind of outline as well, where when you love someone in your life, you want to support them even if their changes don't match what you want in your reality. Her changes wouldn't match my reality. My changes wouldn't match hers. Your changes aren't matching your wife's reality. And so there's going to be pain, there's going to be hurt, there's going to be anger, no matter which direction you go. So having that in mind, you aren't necessarily limited by which direction you want to take. You can actually go in either direction. It's going to hurt her either way. So what do? You do the best thing that you can for both of you. Again, that's my perspective. That's my opinion. But going forward, which direction would make you feel even more guilty and more to blame? Would it be staying in the relationship, not being able to be yourself and holding back, not being able to love her the way you are, the way you want to be? Or would it be leaving and allowing yourself to explore this part of you, or this whole of you, WHOLE, and moving forward in that direction so that you become more fulfilled? And the people that really love and support you and want you to be happy are going to see this transition as something that is good for you. Not everyone's going to understand. Some people are going to probably drop you as a friend. I mean, I hope that's not true. But not everyone is ready for that kind of transition. Even good friends have a challenge with that kind of transition because now you're becoming someone else in their eyes. So the guilt may be difficult to drop for now, but you're still in the situation. You face it every day. And while you're facing it, it's a reminder of, her expression is a reminder. Her emotions are a reminder. Her state of mind is a reminder to you. And you get reminded that, I know she didn't sign up for this, and I believe she doesn't want someone who's a transgender, and you're going to take that on a little bit. And I think that's okay. This is kind of the opposite advice that you might hear, but I think it's okay to take on a little guilt. It's not your fault. This happened, and there's really nothing you can do about it. But at the same time, you signed up with someone to be with them for the rest of their life in a certain manner. And that manner's not happening. So, okay, let's take on this responsibility and really own it. You know what? I'm sorry. You're right. You didn't sign up for this. You can tell her this. You didn't sign up for this. I know you didn't. And I'm really sorry. This is happening inside of me, and I have to face it. And if I don't face it, I'm not being authentic. I can't be the best me for you. I can't do it. So I want to let you know that I am truly sorry. There's nothing I can do to stop this except to explore it and figure out what the best direction and goal is for me in this. And I imagine you've probably had this conversation too. So not only am I telling you this, but I'm just saying this in general for anyone listening that might be in a similar situation. When it comes to something major changing in your life that the other person didn't sign up for, you just own it. You just get into it and say, this is something that's happening to me and I'm going to accept it. I'm going to explore it. I'm going to see where it takes me. And you can even say, I'd really love your support in this. You may get, no, I can't support you. I can't do it. This is not who I know you as. I can't do it. And when you get that, you honor that too. You make sure that you understand their perspective. If they made a major change in their life, you'd probably feel some cognitive dissonance as well, where you can't even wrap your head around what's happening. Like, this isn't who I married, or this isn't who I thought you were, or how can I get used to this change? And so one of my main points here is to absolutely own that this is happening to you. Own it. Don't be hesitant about it. Really own it, explore it, and do what you can with it. Now, this doesn't help with her. She needs some help. She does need some help. I don't know how to help you help her do that. But if she isn't addressing what's going on in her life, then any bad news is going to be bad news that leads to her wanting to kill herself or threatening to kill herself or stay depressed, I'm not sure there. And my heart goes out to her too. I'm not putting her down for not accepting you or not being in a better space herself. I'm just hoping that you can help her see that no matter what you do with your life, she needs to take care of what's going on her side of the fence here too. So with the guilt and the blame, that's going to dissipate. Listen to my episodes on getting rid of guilt, and that'll help you connect with guilt in a different way and treat it in a different way, because it is possible that if and when you get out of this marriage, that you may still feel bad for a long time, maybe forever. You may feel bad that you and her got connected and married and she thought she was getting someone and you gave her someone else. You may feel bad about that for the rest of your life. And that's just something that could happen. But that's okay too. That's just part of life. We disappoint people. We go through our own transitions and then suddenly somebody looks at us and says, "Oh, you're not who I thought you were." And then we disappoint them. I mean, we can't take every blow like that and have it defeat us, because we will never get through life, because this is just how it is. People change all the time. And some people change in a major way. Some people change in minor ways. This is why a lot of marriages don't work, because when there are changes, the partner that isn't changing is looking at the one that is changing and doesn't want it to happen. I wanted you the same person that I married, and it doesn't always happen. People change, and when they do, it's a matter of resilience and love and support and whatever else is already in there that makes up the foundation. If that stuff's not already in there, like it sounds like it wasn't already in there for you, then the changes are more devastating. The changes are harder. But they still happen, and you still have to get comfortable with it happening, even if it doesn't feel comfortable. So there's not much good, I'm telling you here, I know that, but there's also a lot of good if you decide that you need to explore this more and more and not be inauthentic with anyone, including yourself. So how does this translate to letting her go? Like you said, how do I let her go if it comes down to it? I feel like I'm trapped between two worlds. How do I honor myself when doing so hurts someone that I love? You can't avoid it. This is the same dilemma we talked about a little earlier. If you stay in the marriage, you'll be hurting her. If you leave the marriage, you'll be hurting her. If you transition, you'll be hurting her. I don't know if this is 100% true, but this is what I'm assuming. No matter what you do, it's going to hurt her. This is why your decision is really all about the direction you go that hurts her. So you can choose the direction you go. It doesn't matter. It's going to hurt her. I hope that doesn't sound insensitive to her. I don't mean to be. But the hurt's already there. So your question of how do you honor yourself without hurting her, you can't. If people are attached to the way you are, then no matter what you do, you can't not hurt them. I hope that made sense. If people want you to stay the way you are, and you decide to honor yourself and do something for yourself, and they don't like it, they will probably be hurt. There's nothing you can do about that. That is not on you. That is on them. In order to be around other people, live with them, share our lives with them, we have to know that they're going to go through their own types of transitions. They are going to go through their own crises and their own shifts and their own challenges. And hopefully we can help them go through it, and hopefully we can support them through it. But sometimes we can't. Sometimes the things are just too drastic of a change that we can't. So I can't help you get out of the hurting someone else stage of this. I don't think it's possible. So my final thoughts on this are definitely, like I've already said, listen to Love and Abuse, the one I talked about where they threaten suicide. Make sure you have a good grasp on that, because you're going to need that. And listen to my episodes on guilt. Go to theoverwhelmedbrain.com, type in the word guilt, and you'll find all kinds of episodes where I talk about guilt and how to handle that. However, it's going to be difficult to get rid of the guilt while you stay in it, while the reminder's in your face all the time. And what I mean by that is she'll remind you that what you're doing is probably hurtful to her. And if you are constantly reminded on a day-to-day basis of that, it's hard to get out of that guilt stage. You won't be able to do it. I don't think you will, because you sound like you're a caring, compassionate, empathetic person. And if you are, then you will feel guilty about it. But don't let that stop you from really addressing what you need to do inside of you, because it sounds like she isn't going to be satisfied no matter what you do. Unless, and this is the only caveat, you suddenly change your mind about your gender. And like I said, even if that were the case, even if you decided, no, I'm going to stay the same, my marriage is worth it, I'm going to stick around, you still have this shaky foundation of a marriage because of the issues you're in. So I feel what you're going through. I know it's a challenge. I know this is very difficult for you. And I'm so glad you're seeing a therapist. And I really hope that person can help you through anything that I couldn't address here. And just remember that compassion for your wife. It's honoring yourself with love for others. I like to practice that in my own life. I honor myself. This is the path I need to take. And I love you. I still love you, and I want you to be happy too. And I know what I'm doing, you probably disagree with. You may even hate, but I have to do this for me. And I really want your support, but I know you probably can't give it. It's something you disagree with, and it definitely wasn't what you signed up for. And because of that, I'm sorry. And I still have to do this for me. Sometimes the best you can do is still give someone bad news. But in the long term, when you choose the best and healthiest path for both of you, even though that path might be disagreed upon, in the long term, you do the best you can for both of you. You want to avoid sacrifice, you want to avoid pain, sometimes you can't do it. And your life is going to be so different, probably so fulfilling. I've read many stories where somebody made a transition and their life changed. They felt natural. They felt themselves again. There's nothing better than feeling like you can be yourself. I want that for you. Whatever that is for you, I want that for you. Thank you so much for writing, and thanks for listening to this episode. I hope this helps. I appreciate you. We'll be right back with my thank yous and my goodbyes and my last comments right after this. Thank you for listening to another episode of The Overwhelmed Brain. I want to thank Clear. Go to clearme.com/brain and use the promo code BRAIN when checking out to get 2 free months of Clear. Hey, if you're ever in an airport or a sporting event, I don't see why you wouldn't do this. clearme.com/brain. And make sure to use the promo code BRAIN to get your 2 free months. I also want to thank someone special that I talked to this week, Julia. I want to say that I enjoyed our conversation, and I want to thank you for your support of the show. She says she listens to the show all the time to refresh her brain with information that she either needs to hear the first time or hear again or hear from a new perspective. And I just want to say, wow, I'm touched by her comments, and I want to thank you, Julia, for what you said and for your support, and I appreciate you. And she supports through the Patreon program over at patron.theoverwhelmedbrain.com. And I'm so humbled by those of you that support the show. So I want to thank each and every one of you that have supported the show in the past or are currently supporting the show, because that's how we keep going. I appreciate you. Thank you, Julia, and thank you to all Patreon members and anyone who's made a donation. I appreciate you. And I want to remind you of the Love and Abuse podcast over at loveandabuse.com. It is more than just emotional abuse. It's all about difficult relationships and how to get along with each other. It doesn't necessarily mean that the person you're with wants to get along. Sometimes that happens, but at least you'd have some more resources and more tools just in case you're in a relationship, any relationship, family, friend, romantic. No matter what it is, you can learn a little bit more about your relationship and how to communicate with sometimes difficult people, even if that difficult person is you. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes I'm the difficult person in my relationship. So my girlfriend has all those resources that she can use with me. Actually, she doesn't listen to that show. Hopefully she will never need to, because I try not to be difficult, but I'm sure she can list my many, many shortcomings. Finally, I'd like to thank Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com for some of the music transitions in The Overwhelmed Brain. And for my final words, I want to talk about the impossible decisions that we are sometimes faced with, just like Joe in his email in the last segment. He's faced with the decision that if I follow my path and I honor myself and I do what's right for me, it's going to hurt my wife. It's going to be painful for her. It's going to bring heartache. It's going to bring devastation, or whatever it is that's in his relationship that is going to happen. It's just not an easy relationship. So if he goes in the direction that he really wants to do for himself, she gets hurt. If he stays the same way and doesn't explore the feelings that he's having, the thoughts that he's having about being transgender and maybe transitioning, then maybe he's going to feel pain. Maybe he will feel repressed, and maybe his life will just be unhappy from that point on. And that's a challenging decision because he doesn't want to hurt anyone else, and he wants to honor himself. And those kinds of decisions happen to so many people every day. And you have a choice. And sometimes it feels like you have no choice. Sometimes it feels like you're stuck. Well, I'll tell you where I go with this and how I make my decisions, if it helps you at all. When it comes to making those types of tough decisions, for me, it almost always comes down to how I'm going to be able to give them the best version of myself. And so, I might look at Joe, and if I was in his position, how can I possibly give the best version of myself to my wife? If I stay and repress, that's not the best version of me. I'm holding back. I'm resisting. I've got all my defenses up, or not my defenses, but I can't be myself. And so I'm not going to be able to bring my authentic, happier self into the relationship. So that's not the best version of myself. What if I stay and become the best version of myself? What if I just choose to honor myself and be that way and hope she supports me, even though she probably won't? Well, now I'm becoming the best version of myself. However, I have this resistance from the other side. Now I can tell she's not happy with me, and every time I come home, she gives me that look, and I'm creating a toxic environment for myself. And I'm just playing out a scenario here. I'm not saying it's exactly what would happen, but I imagine what might happen is I want to be this best version of myself, so I honor myself, and that's who I show up as in the relationship, and it's totally rejected. And she might even hate it. If she hates this version of me, then me showing up as myself, I get that type of treatment, or I get that look, or I get that resistance, or I'm in a house where someone can't stand me. So that would cause me to again repress. That would cause me again to back off a little bit and close my heart a little bit. So maybe that wouldn't work out. So there's two options so far that I'm kind of crossing off my list. What's the next option? Well, what if I leave that relationship and I go explore what I need to explore in myself and really figure out if that's what I really want in my life, and if it is, keep going in that direction. But I'm hurting her, continuing to use Joe's example here, I'm hurting her. I'm not really hurting her, but she is definitely hurt by my behavior, my actions, by leaving the relationship. But I'm honoring myself, so I'm moving in the direction that honors me and allows me to become more authentic, more of who I feel I am, or who I really am, and I'm going in that direction, but she's still hurt, so that makes me feel bad, and I don't like it, but I'm noticing I'm still becoming more of myself. There's less resistance in this direction. It's still not favorable all around, but it is the best choice I could make so far, considering all the variables, all the options I have. At this point, this third choice I have seems to be the best decision. But it still hurts. It still sucks. It's just not good because she's going to be hurt, and her being hurt, I love her and I don't want her to be hurt. So that hurts me. Yet it's better than the other two. So these tough decisions, they're tough for a reason. There's no absolute win-win, no matter how you look at it. So overall, as long as I gauge the outcome that allows me to present the best version of myself to the world, that decision almost always wins. It's rare that it doesn't, but it almost always wins, because if I can show you the best version of me and you're a supportive person and want me to be happy, then our connection is only strengthened. But if I show you the best version of me and you don't like it, then it's also a good thing, because now you can remove me from your life or decrease exposure to me in your life and invest your time in someone else or something else that you find more beneficial or makes you happy or want to connect with more than me. And as odd as this sounds, I think that's a gift. You give someone a gift when you take what they resist away. Not all situations, but you get what I'm saying here. It's like, if you take something that they don't want in their life, and if that's you, you take that out of the equation and you leave them without you. It sounds terrible. It sounds bad, because now they're alone and they may not like being alone, or they signed up to be married forever and now it's not happening. But you can't show up as the person they want you to be, so they would be miserable no matter what. Then it's a gift that you've given them to give them the opportunity to find someone else or do something else with their time and their life and find something that works for them. This is one of those things where, people change, life changes, and we kind of have to go with the flow. Otherwise, we get stuck in a rut, hoping things change, waiting for things to change, but they never do, and we stay miserable. And this is very similar to when I talk about obsession. I've talked about obsession a few times on this show, and what ends up happening is that you can't stop thinking about so-and-so or something. You just keep thinking about it, hoping it'll change, waiting for it to change, wishing it will change, praying for it to change, and it never does, so you get stuck. And it's a loop. It's a constant cycle over and over and over again. You hope it changes, it doesn't change. There's a small chance it might change, and then it doesn't change. And over again, you're just stuck in this loop. And sometimes the only way to get out of a loop like that is to have a definitive answer, an absolute, a no question about it. That's my final answer. There's nothing more you can say or do. You either take it or leave it. And what this means is that if you're the person ruminating over something and you're stuck in that obsession loop, let's just say that you can't get over your ex, and your ex finally says, look, there's no chance that we will ever be together again. I don't want you. I don't want to be near you. Go away. I don't want to see you ever again. As much as that might hurt to hear, it would be definitive. It would be conclusive. It gives you the opportunity to finally move on. What our brain does is fill in the gaps when we don't hear that. It fills in those little gaps that says, well, maybe there's a chance, maybe they'll come back. And if they do, then I'll be happy again. So I'm just going to keep thinking about it and hoping and praying and wishing and all this stuff that really becomes a waste of our time. Because if you've ever obsessed over anything, have you ever gotten what you've obsessed over? I mean, if you have, congratulations, you're one of the very few, but I've never gotten anything I've obsessed over, unless it was something I paid for. That's different. I mean, if you're obsessing over a new car and you save and save and save, and you finally get that new car, that's different. I'm talking about things that you really can't control. You're obsessed over your ex and you want them back, but they don't want to come back. And so you continue to be obsessed over something that will never happen. And that's the awful part about obsession, is that you just continue in that cycle. But if they give you a definitive, no, it'll never happen, ever, you really have no choice. If you choose to obsess after that point, then you might be getting close to a mental breakdown or something. And I'm not saying that to be funny, but it does lead to some really terrible anguish and stress. And if you can't even make a decision based on what you hear or see as fact, then you're really digging yourself a rut that's very difficult to get out of. But, relating that to Joe's marriage, for example, by making the definitive decision, by making it very clear inside himself and to others that this is what I'm going to do. This is exactly what I'm doing. I'm sorry if nobody likes it, but this is what I need to do for myself. Then that's an absolute, and it can't be refuted. This is what Joe wants to do. This is what he's going to do. Now, Joe does have that extra challenge of her threat to commit suicide. And, you have to take that seriously. And at the same time, she's threatened several times, which tells me that's her way of controlling him. But still, what if she does? That's the thought. That's why I told Joe, listen to that episode on suicide and get prepared and treat it seriously. Absolutely. Treat it seriously. If she's going to threat and use it as a control, then you need to take it seriously, and maybe you need to call the police when she mentions it again, because you're afraid that she's going to do it. And what this will probably end up doing is that if she's really not serious and she's using it as a threat, and she knows that you're just going to call the police every time she uses it, she's going to stop doing it. And if she really is serious and she does want to kill herself, then the police arrive and hopefully take care of that situation. So either way, that's the direction I move in. And I know this is not an easy decision, calling the police on your wife. I know it's not easy all around. But sometimes the major shifts in life require hard decisions. And you're making a few. Sometimes we're faced with these hard decisions. So I wish anyone the strength that they need to make the hard decisions and to come up with a system like I did that helps you make hard decisions, helps you make those impossible decisions. I also like to make decisions based on what I value most, what's most important to me. So there's all kinds of ways that you can make decisions that are right for you. But I do side with when you can show up as the best version of yourself, what decision leads to that. That's kind of cool, and it almost always leads to a happier, healthier living and being. But no matter what decision you have to make, just always keep an open mind so that you can step into your power. This will help you be firm in those decisions so that you can create the life you want. Always take steps to grow and evolve. You are powerful beyond measure. And above all, and this is something I absolutely know to be true about you, you are amazing.